Jesus is polyamorous.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you heard me right.
I'm not sure if I did. Today we've got a video that showed up in my Facebook feed, and, well, it's something. It's certainly something. Now, for those of you who don't know and haven't caught on in many of the live discussions that I've been in, I am polyamorous. I've been in polyamorous relationships, so when I saw this video, it definitely struck a bit of a chord with me. For those who aren't aware, polyamorous relationships are simply relationships where multiple people can be dating at once. Basically, if you have a girlfriend, there's nothing stopping that girlfriend from having another girlfriend or a boyfriend, and there's nothing stopping you from having multiple girlfriends or boyfriends. This is, of course, with the caveat that everybody has to agree on all partners that come in, and there is a huge emphasis on testing for sexually transmitted diseases to make sure that no ill fate befalls the group. I won't get into more details than that right now. For now, let's go ahead and let the video play and speak for itself.
Jesus is polyamorous. We know this already, though, even if we don't think about it or put it in those terms.
How? How do we know that? Please start making this make sense to me.
If you're one of those Christians who believes in the importance of a personal relationship with Jesus, well, Jesus is having personal relationships with billions of other people, too. He's kind of a relationship slut. An empowered, reclaimed sort of slut.
Okay, yes, but if I put on my Christian goggles for just a second here, the Christian in me would tell you that those are relationships more akin to very loving family relationships or friendships. It's not the same thing as a sexual lover. If it were, then this would give a whole new meaning to wanting Jesus inside of you.
Hey there, I'm Brian G. Murphy. I'm one of the co-founders of theology.com. I'm a Christian, and I'm polyamorous. I'm also kind of a slut. The reclaimed, empowering kind of slut. Like Jesus. I
have no problem with the reclamation of the term slut in order to use it as a form of endearment and empowerment instead of the pejorative that it's classically been utilized as. But to constantly say that you are this type of person and so is Jesus is a little bit disingenuous. For one, the entire idea of reclaiming the word slut is basically as a form of female empowerment, and Jesus was born in a time of great and oppressive misogyny as well as a, for the most part, hierarchical, patriarchal structure. This would be a structure that would allow for polygamy, but not necessarily polyamory on the whole, since having your wives have extra boyfriends would kind of be looked down upon by society.
Jesus' polyamory goes beyond this personal relationship idea, though. It's deeper, biblical even. In Ephesians 5, Paul specifically uses the word marriage to describe Christ's relationship with us. Repeatedly, Paul reminds us that Jesus gave himself for us, the church, which Paul describes as the whole body of believers.
Yes, and in the Old Testament, God was portrayed as both divorcing and violating Israel. This allegorical language has been used all throughout the Bible, but it's just that. It's allegory. It does not mean that God literally had a relationship with a nation and violated them, just like in Ephesians, Paul isn't saying that Christ literally has a sexual relation with the church.
In this marriage, Jesus isn't married to one person, he's married to the entire body of believers. Jesus is in a pansexual, polyamorous relationship with us.
I'm not sure if I should touch that one.
And so, of course, Christians can be polyamorous. That's a biblical model of relationship.
No, polygamy is a biblical model of relationship. One male, multiple wives. It's a bit of a toxic model for a relationship because if you're going to have yourself open to multiple partners, your partner should be given the same courtesy. But so far, the only way that you've backed up this version of marriage is by saying that the Bible endorses it through allegory. This is a little bit disingenuous.
We already recognize that God's love for us isn't diminished by God's love for others, and that each of us can have a unique, transcendent relationship with the divine. Our relationship with God can be a model for our romantic and sexual relationships as well.
I'll be honest, Brian, I really don't want a relationship with God to model the same type of relationship that I would like to have with my partners. You see, one of the biggest things that is drilled into you in the polyamorous community is communication. And communication is a two-way street. You're constantly having to set up schedules amongst multiple people, figure out who's dating who on what days are you having singular activities with singular partners, what days are you having group activities. It's a lot to manage, and it's a very, very stressful environment to maintain a relationship relationship in. It's not easy. And the difference between a relationship with God and a polyamorous relationship is that a relationship with God has only a one-way line of communication. I'm sorry, but nobody receives direct communication from God. If you think you do, depending on the type of conversations you're having with God, you may or may not need to seek some type of psychiatric help. If you're just interpreting bits of scripture as communication directly to you through some type of divine thoroughfare, then sure, that's fine. You're not really receiving direct communication, though. You're reading a book. If you are, however, hearing legitimate voices in your head and interpreting those as some type of divine being, then I would highly suggest some type of professional help. For the rest of the world who don't receive any type of communication back from God in any legitimate sense, we would be left with a relationship that most mirrors a passive-aggressive, silent treatment type relationship that is nothing but toxic. And I apologize, but I wouldn't want to mirror my relationship structure over one that is overtly toxic. Communication is key, and I'd like to have an actual communication partner.
You know how you feel when something good happens to someone you care about? When your friend, child, neighbor, or coworker connects with the divine? That's how I feel when my partners date or meet someone new or are just head over heels for someone else.
Okay. In polyamory, the word for that is compersion. And what does that have to do with literally anything you just said? You're comparing the feeling of somebody else joining your religion and having a religious experience with compersion. These are not the same things, considering that somebody else experiencing your religion means that you're not sacrificing anything at all. They're just experiencing the religion that you two share, whereas compersion is the opposite of jealousy. As opposed to feeling jealous that your partner is happy with somebody else, you would feel compersion and feel happy that they're happy. This is not the same dynamic that you find in religious structures. While jealousy is a normal base reaction we would have in relationships, if you were to feel a similar thing when somebody felt something in your church, then in that case again, we would probably be suggesting that you seek some type of professional help. Whereas in relationships, jealousy is a completely natural phenomenon and in some cases can be healthy. So your comparison between the two is a little bit frustrating, considering that, in my opinion, there is no comparison between these two dynamics.
How beautiful, how majestic that they get to have more love in their life, and how exciting that someone else gets to experience the amazingness of my partner. The word polyamory comes from poly and amorous, many loves.
This one's a bit of a nitpick, but as much as I identify as somebody who's polyamorous, I recognize that the etymology of that word is a bit misguided. Mainly in that the beginning of the word poly has Greek origins, whereas amorous has Latin, medieval Latin, and Old French origins. I know that it's wonderful that in the English language we have a melting pot of multiple different dialects, and this causes words like this to come up after time, but it does mean that we end up running into some issues when looking at the etymological origins of words like this.
We all already have many loves. The question then becomes, how do you express that love? With whom? How do you do life? We want to help you sort through those questions. Is polyamory for me? How do I share with my church community that I'm in a polyamorous relationship? How do I talk with my partner about wanting an open relationship? How do I integrate polyamory with my faith?
Honestly, that one should be simple. Your faith doesn't have to integrate with literally every other aspect of your life. It can be its own separate thing. You see, as humans, we have this wonderful ability to compartmentalize our beliefs and our knowledge, and this helps us when it comes to issues of cognitive dissonance. Instead of trying to use a form of apologetics to retrofit religion into your current belief structure, perhaps the more honest course would be to recognize that the two are not congruent.
If you want to explore the intersections of polyamory and Christianity, or you want some hands-on support in your own life and relationships, head on over to queertheology.com/polyamory. We've got some resources up now and we'll be continuing to add to them. You can also sign up for updates to be in the loop as we add more. We see in Ephesians an understanding that marriage can be polyamorous, that Jesus is polyamorous with us, and so we know that it's possible. Of course, we also see other types of relationships in Scripture, some healthier than others, and no one has to be polyamorous.
Except they do, because you spent so much time muddying the definition of polyamory to the point where it means literally any and all relationships, especially that with your religious figure. We encounter this lovely little problem where you say that not everybody has to be polyamorous, but you endorse a religion that says that everybody has to follow Christ, and you originally stated that Christ has a polyamorous relationship with everyone. So which is it? Can everybody choose to be polyamorous, or does Christ have a polyamorous relationship with everybody? You can't have both, especially not the way that you've set this up.
But it's one way of structuring relationships, and it can be a deeply faithful one. And so it is.
And there you have it, folks. A tiredly apologetic video attempting to somehow retrofit his religion into polyamory, which, in my estimation, is maybe a little bit disingenuous, but at the very least, it seems that Brian means well. He wants people who live a fringe lifestyle to have the ability to integrate that lifestyle with their faith seamlessly. I can at least somewhat understand this approach, considering that I took a similar approach when explaining that I was poly with my mom. The problem with this approach, though, is that it assumes that you have to incorporate religion into every structure of your life, and you simply don't. I would argue that if you're going to have a relationship like this, you should do it in spite of your religion, but I'm an atheist, so obviously I have a bit of bias there. Maybe the best overall approach is to incorporate religion into the marriage the same way you would incorporate religion into, well, math. You don't, because it's not needed. People of different faiths can marry. As a result, they don't necessarily need to have congruent religions in order to stay together and be happy. Based on that fact alone, I would argue that there really is no need to have faith in your polyamorous relationship. You can have your faith completely separate from that relationship, and it will probably be healthier for it. But with that said, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Tuesday, and let me know what you think of Brian's video in the comment section below. On a tangential note, if you have any questions about polyamory, I'd be happy to answer those in the comment section below as well. You know, assuming Richard Carrier hasn't done this entire shtick to death. One last thing before we go. For anybody who's been following on Twitter, you know that I no longer have a studio light. There's also been some studio equipment that I either don't have or have cheaped out on due to the fact that funding is a bit sparse. In light of that, I'm going to start putting an Amazon wish list into my description as well. If there's anything in the wish list you want to pick up, then feel free to do so, and I would be incredibly thankful to you. Things on the wish list will range from things to help the channel to luxury items. Please by no means feel like you have to pick anything up. There's no reason to pick anything up if you don't have the slush funds to do so. But if you are a friend of the channel, it is one method you can use to support it if you so choose, aside from other venues like Patreon or my sparse merch store. Anyways, with all that out of the way, I will see you guys in tomorrow's video, and as we move into the Patreon slides, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.